9:10 now. A little later this morning, we'll get a clearer sense of whether South Africa is on track to push growth above 1% this year. That's when Statistics South Africa releases the third quarter GDP numbers. There is cautious optimism in the air. Both National Treasury and the Reserve Bank have revised their growth forecasts upward. Our business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo will be at the Stats SA offices, and that will be the briefing led by Statistician General Risenga Maluleke. Of course, Ntokozo, good morning. Broadly positive indicators, it seems. But where are the bright spots, and was it enough to push growth to 1% or even higher in the third quarter?
Good morning, Michelle. Expectations and I suppose the hopes of a lot of people in the market is that it does edge above that 1% growth. Of course, 1% at the beginning of the year being the expectation that we are going to see for 2025. But of course, that surprise performance in the second quarter after we registered 0.8% growth, both the National Treasury and SARB then, ticking up their forecast, as you rightfully said, on the back of that, the impact of those U.S. tariffs not seemingly hurting, the progress the economy is making in terms of registered growth, as was expected earlier on in the year. Exports also a little shaky, but industries seemingly managed to still register growth. 8 out of the 10 economic industries did grow in the second quarter of the year. Agriculture registering growth over 3 quarters, and the expectation is that it will continue to grow. And I am in Wandile Sihlobo's office here. I was looking through his latest book, The Uncomfortable Truth About South Africa's Agriculture, and why the industry really does expect agriculture once again to be that shining star as the industry or agriculture ministry starts to deal with the foot and mouth disease that has sort of hampered the industry's competitiveness. And Wandile, thank you for making it through the traffic and allowing me into your office. And thank you for talking to us. We are going to hear from Stats SA in just under 2 hours on how the economy performed in the third quarter. You expect agriculture to be the shining star. Talk us through that.
I mean, look, in the second quarter, we saw that agricultural performance dropped from a double digit to a single digit, just over 2%. And one of the key things at the time was because there were delays in the harvest of the grains. Grains that would have been harvested in the second quarter was moved to the third quarter because the season had started late by a month and a half. But looking at agriculture in general, we've had one of the excellent seasons. I mean, you think about soybean, record crop this year. In maize, second largest crop on record, and all of the other field crops. But most importantly, also in the horticulture, fruits and vegetables, we've seen that the production levels have been exceptional, which has boosted both exports also and just the general activity domestically. And I think those two subsectors alone will be sufficient to deliver solid growth to agriculture. And of course, we still do have some of the important subsectors that are struggling with some challenges, the livestock industry, foot and mouth disease. But I think these two subsectors, field crops as well as fruits, will be able to deliver solid growth in the third quarter of this year.
And I suppose the rain's a good thing for the farmers as well that we are experiencing. But if we look back to the first and second quarter, from Stats SA, we did see some revisions on agriculture's performance. Help us understand what those revisions tell us about the true picture of what's happening in the agricultural sector.
I mean, I think the key thing, which is really the underpinning driver of growth in agriculture, because the reality is that there has not been a fundamental policy shift. We are just in a blessed period where we were through a La Nina period, which delivered all of these excellent rains, and we see that continuing also into 2026. But in terms of the agricultural sector, it's very difficult to actually estimate the agricultural performance on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Part of the issue issue always has to do with when certain crops are harvested, when they are delivered. And of course, if you're using the baseline historical thinking in some of these commodities, you would think that harvesting only happens at a particular periods, which is the typical occurrence. But the rainfall does shape on when things actually end up happening, which is why you saw Stats SA making some of these revisions. And I think, and this is what we always write at AgriBiz to say, the best important thing in here is always looking at the annual figures and what the annual figures would be. And this year, we have said repeatedly that this sector will probably grow just over 8% on agricultural gross value added for the year. But of course, these quarterly performance are very important indicators. So when there are those revisions, as long as they are within the acceptable range, it's really something that I think analysts and many people out there in the market, they do expect when it comes to agriculture, given its volatility and the weather.
Absolutely. Now, we were with you a few days ago at the AFASA conference in Pretoria, looking at really ensuring that when we do register this growth, it is inclusive growth, bringing on Black emerging farmers, but also household farmers such as myself. My tomatoes are growing. Talk us through what that transformation would mean for accelerating growth in the industry and how we cater to each of the segments within agriculture. So the guys looking to be commercial, those that are emerging, and those that are happy to serve their communities and remain small scale and backyard farmers.
I think the core thing is that South Africa's agriculture has the potential to see its gross value expanding by plus 30%. That, of course, is dependent on us releasing some of the land that is owned by the state to Black South Africans with title deeds, and then they can farm that. That's a sizable amount of land, Ntokozo, just over 2.5 million hectares of land. It's not the land that the government has to go and buy from white farmers. It's the land that it has already bought in the open market and paid a fair value for it. So it's really about distributing it at this time around. But you and I know that the core problems of South Africa is poverty, it's unemployment, and it's slow growth. And if we succeed in bringing that land into full production, we estimate that there could be close to 1 million jobs that could be created in agriculture and its value chain. And we know that these are numbers that are not new. In Chapter 6 of the National Development Plan in 2012, they said this. And when we worked on the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan, these were some of the thinkings that we were seeing that this could go on that way. And most importantly, which is the last point here, is that all of this growth needs not to happen leaving others behind. The issue of shared prosperity is really important when we are thinking about this, because we know that South Africa's agriculture has more than doubled since 1994. It has been an excellent period, but it has left others behind. And I think that the medium scale and some of the family farms, they some of the people that needs to benefit on that. The plan is there. It's the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan. It needs implementation. Implementation
as always. Wandile Sihlobo, of course, the chief economist here at the Agriculture Chamber of Business South Africa. And really, once again, while the growth might be registered and the opportunity and potential to further grow the industry, to really see that inclusive growth that trickles into inclusive overall macroeconomic growth, it needs that implementation of those master plans. So we are going to hear from the statistician general at about 11:30 on how then the economy performed in the third quarter of the year, Michelle.
Shared prosperity, what a wonderful phrase that is, and something to aspire to. Ntokozo Khumalo, thanks for that update. Of course, we'll be tracking that story for you from 11:30.